All right, we are doing episode 3 of the Hagen's Alley Books podcast. Some cool stuff here where I'm going to go over some of the stuff that's going on with the books, as well as basically giving myself an excuse to shoot the shit with some of my buddies that have been involved in projects, and I've been involved in their stuff and hung out with them at conventions. And one of my really good friends from the East Coast convention scene and shooting the shit with, I got my buddy Mike on today. Go ahead and tell everybody a little bit of who you are, Mike.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, so name's Mike Levy, and I go by Mike Tendo on YouTube. I have a channel. It's youtube.com/dongled. And it is a smorgasbord of a bunch of different stuff, which we'll get into, I guess, a little later. And
absolutely,
podcasts and all sorts of goodness. So lots of content. I've been doing YouTube for God knows how long. Probably about this is my, I think, 6th year.
Damn, almost as long as my YouTube channel here. My YouTube channel here is like really old, but I've never done content like constantly. Like this will be like the most constant content that I'll have.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have one of the most complex names for a show that you do on YouTube, but it's really cool though. The show's cool.
Yeah, no, I have the main show is called Dude, You Haven't Played This Game.
Exactly.
And yeah, it's a mouthful, but it's a lot of fun. I consider it edutainment.
Yeah, you have skits too, which is really cool.
Yep. Yeah, it's skit based with just like complex reviews. The show's gotten a lot better over the years. When I started out, I had no idea what I was doing, which I think that's kind of the case with everybody. Nobody really starts out doing something and completely knows what they're doing. Some people do, some don't, but I can talk about the history of the show and how I started it, and I'll talk about all that, but that's what's going on.
Absolutely. And we will definitely dig into the psyche of Mike Tendo, the dongled as it may be, because you had a little bit of a different names throughout the years. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. The channel itself, Dongled, is I don't know. It's kind of like if you're familiar with Happy Video Game Nerd. Like his show is called Happy Video Game Nerd, but his channel was Low Fat Jello.
Yeah.
And I didn't do that intentionally. When I started my channel, it was more just I want an account so that way I could stay subscribed to people. And I was like, well, what am I gonna come up with? And Dongled was what I came up with. And the inside joke behind Dongled is when I was in college. This is so long ago, back in the day, laptops didn't have built-in Ethernet, a lot of them. So what you had to do is buy like a PCM CIA card.
And a dongle.
I ended up buying, and you had to like buy a dongle with that, like a dongle cable.
Wow.
So I didn't realize that, and the card that I bought, and I bought it, got it home, plugged it in, installed everything, got it all up and running, and downloaded the drivers, got all that nonsense ready. And then I plug in the card, and I go to plug in the cable and realize that it's a PCM card, not a PCM CIA card. And I look at my roommate, who is my buddy James, who's just hilarious, and he's just like, I'm like, do you believe this? I was like, I bought the wrong kind of card. Like, I need a card with a dongle cable, so that way I could plug in the Ethernet cable. And he was like, dude, you got dongled. So that was kind of like, somebody getting screwed over, or, they made a stupid move or whatever. And that's kind of, the way that dongled was created as far as the name itself goes. So
it's crazy how like little names like that just stick with you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like it was so ingrained in our vocabulary, me and my friends, that not only was I saying it, like literally everybody that I knew at the time was like, oh, you got dongled. Oh man, dongled. So it was like this big like vocabulary word that everybody in my little pack of friends was using. So it just became this really funny thing that people say. And now of course nobody knows what I'm talking about when I say my channel name, and I'm like, I have to re-explain the story every time. So
There you go. Now it's pontificated on a cast somewhere on the internet.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, see, like my name on my channel, I think it's kind of changed now. I think I renamed it or something to Hagen's Alley, possibly.
Yeah.
But like the Subcon 3, that's on like almost everything that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And that one has its own crazy name that I don't even know if I've told on any podcast. And like literally, I was in a video game band like 20 years ago.
Oh, really? Oh, it was called the Subcon 3?
And we called it Subcon, the World of Mario 2, but there was 3 of us.
Okay.
So it was myself, Kyle from VGBS, and our buddy Keenan.
Yeah.
And like we played video game music. Keenan played keyboards where he could play some of the different pieces of the video game music, and Kyle and I played guitar and bass, and we played video game music really, really absurdly, and and we just call it. It was like the Subcon 3 was the email that I was using, and then that ended up being my main email.
Oh, it's funny how that works out.
Yeah, and then now like everybody has that email, so then and it like kind of went to all my Xbox and PlayStation names and everything, and it's like
that's how it goes. I've got I have an AOL account that I use for junk mail that I have had since high school, and whenever I tell people my email, like you go to the store, let's say you're out with friends and you go to the store and they're like, can we have your email address? And I give them that one, and my friends are always like, dude, you still have an AOL account? I'm like, yeah, well, it's my junk email. So
that's classic. The classic AOL, AIM, all that stuff.
Yeah.
The Subcon 3 is also associated with my MySpace account. Oh, yes.
Oh, man, MySpace.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. Back in the day.
It's so classic, though. Like, yeah, it's just crazy how names just, like, follow you, and then there's, like, a story behind it. And it's we both have the same craziness, like,
exactly.
Old school internet monikers.
Yeah. It's weird because nowadays I think a lot of that is lost. Like I think usernames are kind of a thing of the past unless you're like a gamer. Because like if you're a gamer, you have a gamer tag or you have a gamer username or whatever. And I don't think really like a lot of people still have usernames. Like a lot of people just put their names for their email nowadays.
Yeah, they make it more professional.
Right. It's not.
That's hilarious because I'm doing, Hagen's Alley Books is an LLC. It's the business. And I'm sitting there calling freighters to organize things and actual professionals. And I'm like, my email's thesubcon3@gmail.com. And I still use it. I'm never going to forward like a professional because I could do like my name and then just have it forwarded to that one.
Sure.
But no
What's
way.
the fun of that, though?
No
That's
way.
no fun.
I love it, though. It's so hilarious to do it that way.
Definitely.
So going with the quote unquote structure of the cast, I've been talking about like my projects that are going on, and so the big one is that Hidden Gaming Gems Generation by Generation, which is on the title card and it's like all over the descriptions and everything. So that's the next book, the re-release of my first book that was published in 2012 in Europe, and publishing it in the high-quality giant version. It is launching next Friday on the 15th of June.
Nice.
So yeah, it's gonna be probably more in the evening since most of us are in work and doing that stuff. So I'm probably gonna wait till the evening to launch the book. And like basically I think I'm getting some news coverage, some craziness. It's gonna be pretty awesome. I know a lot of people have been asking for volume 1 ever since I released the complete NES with a 2 on it. Like the OCD gamers were like, where's number 1?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, there's this print on demand version of my first book that was only released in tiny quantities in Europe. Like I had this whole story for how to get hidden treasures. But with Hidden Gaming Gems, it's going to be cool because I'm doing a chapter on every gaming generation, all the way from Pong, which is going to be told by the game scholar Leonard Herman. That first chapter, he wrote it, all the way to the Nintendo Switch, which is the beginning of the 9th generation.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy, like, how many different additions I've done, too, because I've added, like, 3 to 4 reviews per chapter myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the classic Hagen's Alley books where people contribute, and then all in the community contribute, like, there's going to be a lot of content to this book. It's going to be a beast.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be huge.
And like, unlike my complete series where it's blippets about each game, these are, 4 to 8 page reviews combined with multiple images that are full page on some of them, or, spread pages that are interspersed with the text just to show off the game and the action. And it's a little more of a detailed review process on it, just to dig into it and why we like it and why it's a hidden gaming gem.
Yeah, a lot more thorough.
Right? Yeah. And the crazy thing is like, back when I first did this book in 2012, I had 3 people, actually, because I did contributors way back then. I don't know if you know who Eric Bailey is. He's
yes,
the Nintendo legend, and then he moved on to Skirmish Frogs, and like, I knew him from a long, long time ago when I ran the VG Masters Club, the Video Game Masters Club website. And basically, like, he contributed a few. Like, he talked about Star Tropics, which was awesome. And then he also talked about a few games that he called hidden gaming gems, but they weren't gems. They were just hidden games, like Tag and Dragon.
Right.
And then I had other guys, there's one guy, Alex, and then another guy that were talking about games, and they just weren't gems. They were just, like, bad games that they were talking about. And
like
Angry Video Game Nerd, who was popular at the time. And, this book came out, it was, like, before Metal Jesus Rock started getting big with hidden gaming gems.
Right.
Which is hilarious. Like,
I was gonna say you're putting out a book in 2018 called, or at least starting a Kickstarter in 2018 called Hidden Gaming Gems. I'm sure you're gonna get a lot of flack from the gaming community because those words are forbidden. As soon as you start saying hidden gaming gems, there's a certain antagonistic approach that I think people take to those words.
Yeah.
And they think you're blowing up the spot on some games that everybody wants to keep as a hidden treasure trove of games all to themselves, or they want the I mean, I'm cool personally with prices going down for games.
Me too.
But people are upset because prices go up.
Yeah, because stock is finite. That is the main thing. And it'll be interesting to see if people are, like you're saying, antagonistic because I'm calling it hidden gaming gems.
Yeah,
but it's like,
I hope not. I hope.
I mean, if they are, they are. It's okay, because I mean, this is literally a re-release of a 6-year-old book.
Right.
And it's just gonna be more in depth and cooler. And I mean, here's the thing though, like Sergio, our buddy Sergio Elizondo, who does Sergio and the Holograms, he is a writer too, and he's written in some of the books. He is covering River City Ransom.
Mm-hmm.
Because to him, people don't know why it's so good. So he wants to talk about the hidden aspects of River City Ransom. It's a different approach, because I wouldn't say the game itself, like most retro gamers know what River City Ransom is.
Right.
But it is a gem.
Not like, it's not like you said, I don't know, like Double Dragon or something that's way more common, or Galaga. Yeah. We're talking about a game from a series that is not, it's well known to a lot of gamers, but I think if you mentioned it, especially to newer gamers in the modern age, they wouldn't know what you were talking about, because River City Ransom games, while they are still coming out, they're not as prevalent, I guess would be probably the best word.
Yeah. And I mean, basically the old, because the moniker of this book is Generation by Generation, but the old moniker, because it was Hidden Treasures, was Rare and Unappreciated Gems. So like I was going by rarity too. So like you were saying, like River City Ransom was a little more uncommon. So like I didn't really come across it as a rental back in the day. So,
Oh yeah.
So
No, I never
that.
saw it first. I never saw it for sale back then.
Yeah, and to me that makes it really cool that, you know, we're able to go back about it now and talk about the nuances. And the thing is that hidden gaming gems, there's no concrete definition, and I'm sticking with that. Like, I'm going to talk about what it means to me, you know, in the beginning of the book, but what it means to me and what it means to you are two different things.
Sure.
And so, like, I know, what was the game you're going to be covering in it? Because I know you're writing about it.
Yes, I'm doing a review for Battlemania Daiginjo, which is a Japanese exclusive game. Didn't come out here in the States. The first game in the series did.
Was it Troubleshooter?
Troubleshooter, right? Yeah. That came out for the Sega Genesis. So Battlemania Daiginjo is the sequel to that, which is a Japanese Mega Drive exclusive, and it got an extremely low print run. It did not sell exceptionally well, but it is one of this is one of those games that, and I'll probably mention this in my review, but whenever anybody asks me what a Sega Genesis hidden gem would be, that is always my first pick. It's got fantastic soundtrack. It's got great gameplay. I mean, if you played the first one, it's like the first one, but a little bit tighter, I would say. More action packed, and it's a phenomenal shooter where you control two different girls.
So what's crazy though is that, like, we're talking like one person. Sergio's talking about River City Ransom. Now you're doing a game, like, I guarantee most people listening have probably not played Troubleshooter on the Sega Genesis. Like, I didn't know about it, and then it's essentially a spiritual successor to Scat on the NES, but you're controlling females.
Yep.
And the thing is that, like, you're doing a more hidden version, a more rarer version of a game that's rare and hidden to begin with on the Genesis. That's more hidden on the Mega Drive in Japan.
Exactly.
Like, that's fucking amazing to me. That's awesome. Like, it's like, that's what drives me like crazy too, is like it's never ending where you can find like amazing gaming experiences nowadays.
Yeah.
And that's where this book's gonna get really cool, I think.
I think that in one of your books, the one with all the Famicom games.
Yeah, the NES Oddities book. Yeah.
Yep. I've been going through that book, and I've just been it's a good coffee table book where you could just like scroll through and flip through the pages and like look at all the games. For Famicom, there's stuff there that I've never heard of, stuff that I'm interested in. You see picture and everything, and you could read the words, and it really kind of motivates you to start really hunting down some of the games that are in the book. So it's kind of why these books exist. It's nice to be able to look at a small glimpse of what your potential gaming interest could lead to. And with this new book, I think that especially with more fleshed out reviews, it's going to be even better, because you'll get a bigger perspective on, you won't just get a snippet. You'll get like a full couple pages or a page or two or whatever of reviews.
A little bit more in-depth look on some of these gems.
And
I do have to admit, though, with the NES Oddities and that whole Famicom section, like, that was a character builder, because I went and played every single game on the Famicom and eliminated games that existed in other regions, and then ones that, like, we wouldn't appreciate, not being able to read all the Japanese.
Right.
And then I went through and, like, then started to format and all the different layouts and start to play the games and get my own take on them and get all the screenshots and everything. Like, that was a character builder and a good segue. You're definitely gonna dig, and a lot of the other readers are gonna dig the definitive complete SNES. Because I added over 100 pages of Super Famicom games in the exact same method. And so like all you guys that helped me out with the original complete SNES, like, you haven't gotten them yet because the book came out and had a spine error where there wasn't a glue on it. And so this is the fix is underway, and I actually have an update for this week again. Like, literally, I was trying to get the books shipped from my warehouse, the remainder of the books that I didn't ship out, because I shipped out, like, I want to say 60 to 80% of the books to everybody.
Oh, wow.
And they had the error. And not everybody has the error, though. So, like, I'm getting responses of people that have problems with it, and I'm like, all right, cool, you're going to get a replacement. No problem.
Right.
And then the printing company was really, really awesome. They were like, okay, we're going to reprint the print run for you because that's crazy. So
yeah, that's awesome that they're doing that.
And that takes, though, like 6 weeks.
Wow.
So while that's working, I'm also taking the remainder of the books and shipping those to a repair facility. So that's out of pocket for me because, the printing company is printing them. So they either could print them all or fix the remainder. And I'm like, well, since I shipped out so many, I'm going to actually need the reprint to ship to people. So the fixed ones, though, were finally shipped out. My warehouse, apparently they don't do freight shipping, which I didn't know. So I had to, like, work with a freight shipping company and, like, set that all up this week while I was working.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. So I got that all. I finally got a confirmation and tracking number and everything. So it's finally getting to the repair facility. That'll take, like, another week. And then I have to ship it back either to me personally or ship it to the warehouse so we could ship it all out.
Right.
Now, in the past, my warehouse has, like, not used bubble wrap and done some crazy stuff, so I'm probably moving to a better facility. And that's good. This is a good this is a good opportunity to move to a new facility for me. So I'm going to utilize this, and there's actually one that doesn't have they have a lot of complainers online about their business. But then I talk to them and I see it. I'm like, all of that stuff that they're complaining about is just because the people don't understand how shipping works.
Right.
Not anything that they're doing. And they're above and beyond my current warehouse, who seems like they're still living in 1980. And
oh, geez.
Yeah, like they're just like they were just literally putting. I mean, you got the NES oddities. I'm pretty sure you got it from the warehouse. They just like put paper around it.
Yeah. I think I got it. I think I got it with another book.
And they like threw a couple pieces of paper in there and said, "Oh, that's packed." And it's like,
yeah. It was in like a FedEx box.
Yeah. I had to explain to them, number one, that's not how you pack stuff.
Right.
Number two, you gotta use a bubble wrap. So like they made it sound like it was some big deal to add bubble wrap to my stuff, and they're like, "Oh, it's gonna cost you like 5 cents." I'm like, why didn't you just do that? I will pay 5 cents. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, I'd rather protect it or whatever.
And then they're still shipping it in that giant FedEx box, though, so the book's still moving. The books, the NES oddities, they're huge. They're heavy books, so they're still moving around and getting like corners dinged up, even with the bubble wrap. Because I'm like, why don't you give me some boxes that fit? And then they were like, well, we could do, like basically a book box that you buy on eBay, which costs like what, 10 cents a box or something on eBay. I shipped out personally all my first like 10 or all my first 5 or 6 print run books, like books from the print run, like all the first 5 or 6 I did personally, and then I finally went to a warehouse because I had too many books and the wife made me move them. And like, so like I know what to do with all this, and like, so they're like, oh yeah, you could get some of those custom ones, and then the warehouse sent me over to another company to buy the boxes, custom boxes.
Really?
So I'm like, and I talked to this dude, and he's like, yeah, it'll cost this much a box and all this. And I'm like, okay. And then I just looked on eBay, and it's like, it's still 10 cents a box or less. Like, I'm like, why wouldn't I just go there and then ship those boxes to them? Like,
yeah, exactly.
These guys are, they're just literally lost in, like, I like that I have somebody, a human being to talk to when I have an issue, which I won't have with the new warehouse. It's more automated. But I'm like, oh man, I just want more modern options, so that way everybody who gets a book from me gets it like perfect.
Right. So there's no issues. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, man. It's just gonna be interesting. Man. And it's just like, this will be like the first time where like I shipped out all the Super Nintendo books, but I'm like waiting on fixes. But then I'm going into the next book because I wanted to launch this Hidden Gaming Gems book like back in April or May. But I literally waited until I had 100% way ahead with the Super Nintendo books. We had multiple delays, all that stuff. So, like, I waited till everybody at least had the books. But then now I'm going to have to move forward so we can at least get this book launched. And because I know a lot of you guys that are contributing are, going to be giving me your reviews, and then it's ready. Like, I already wrote like 350 pages in the new book,
right?
And Hidden Gaming Gems book, so
wow.
It's like it needs to go out. People have been wanting volume 1, so I'm gonna get that out. Hopefully I'll have it before Game On. This time, because of all those delays, right? I put December 2018 is when the book will be released. That's 6 months. Wow. I hope it'll be out in 2.
Yeah.
Like,
that's cool. I mean, that's I know that since you've got like most of the writing done, it's gonna be, I mean, editing of course is always difficult, but once you get the bulk done of the writing, then you'll be on your way, so to speak.
Well, and I do have one of my buddies editing the books now. Like, he started with the definitive complete SNES, so that entire book, so it is 630 pages, not 500 anymore, and that entire book was edited. So like from the original to the definitive, it's edited now for like consistency and repetition, and it's a lot smoother of a read too, which is awesome. It reads awesome now.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I had to go through meticulously and make sure he didn't change the meaning of any of it from the original book too. That was a tough one.
Yeah, I remember when you released the first Super Nintendo book, or was it the Nintendo book? I think it was like the first print run of the Nintendo book.
Yeah.
And I remember then you released like a second version of it. I think it was the Nintendo book, and like it was like night and day, the difference. Like the new printer was definitely way better.
Oh yeah, and like it is ridiculous. And
I think the paper quality and the printing quality on the first book was a little lackluster. Like it was like it looked good, but it didn't look as good as it could have looked. And I think he gave it like a little bit more of a textured feel to it, a little bit more, not glossy, but like a little bit more like cleaner.
There's glossy now.
Oh yeah.
And here's the thing. So basically with the first Super Nintendo book, that's when I learned, because there was an entire Reddit thread dedicated to how people were upset with the quality aspects of it, and they didn't like Joe Simcoe's Super Nintendo Man art, and there was a ton of stuff, and I don't even have a Reddit account, so I just read it all, and I'm like, I don't read stuff and get angry. I read stuff and I go, okay, so how can I make that better?
Right, how can I make the experience better for people? Right,
So the crazy thing is, by reading all of that, and the people were being like assholes on that thing. They were crazy. Like, really, they were being mean as shit. And I was like, damn, if I didn't have a thick skin, I'd be hurt. but the thing was, I did it, and I used that because the printing company that I had was stateside, and they just weren't using good quality. And I first realized it when I would send the books to the 1800s bindery to get the leather-bound tomes made. And they were like, so these are getting bound backward to the standard. Like they're like, if it's vertical, they were doing horizontal or whatever. It was like, these aren't going to hold up. And I'm like, really? So I asked the printing company, and they had no clue what I was talking about. So I'm like, okay.
Oh boy.
So that's when I talked with some other authors. Actually, one of my buddies, Tim Lapatino, did the Art of Atari book. Somebody might have heard of that. The Ultimate Street Fighter book that just came out too. Yeah, so he's like, hey, I got, now I'm using this publisher, but before that I had this printing company that did excellent work. So that I just reached out to him and then like got the sample, and that's who I've went through since the NES oddities and on. So the NES,
I remember,
yeah.
I remember way back in the day when you and I were working on Pixel Nation, the short-lived European magazine that a bunch of us were. I think it was like you, me, and one other person were the only Americans that were on this this mostly British magazine. And we like the issues, the physical issues that came out looked gorgeous, like absolutely gorgeous, like glossy. They were smaller, like smaller in terms of the physical design, but I think that was more like a European design.
Yeah, they were like smaller, like almost like Disney Adventure size books.
Yeah.
They're pretty
But they
cool.
were really cool, yeah. And they were super glossy, really pretty books. And I recall the first issue I think had some binding issues, and then the second fixed those issues.
And the first issue had me like with 2 W's for my last name or something.
Yeah, I think they I don't remember if they didn't credit my name on one of the articles or not. I can't remember, but I was pretty happy with that first issue because I had written and I'd written a bunch of articles for it, but one of the articles I interviewed, I was like, I think one of the first people to interview the voice actors for the Zelda cartoon. For Princess Zelda and
I remember that.
And Link. I interviewed both of them via email and sent them questions, and then they answered my questions, and then I wrote up a really interesting interview, and that made some headlines online when it came out for Pixel Nation. I think that was like one of the most like talked about articles of that issue, which was really cool. Like it got on Zelda Informer and a couple other Zelda sites.
It was super cool. I remember that one. I was reading it and I was like, damn.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting to hear from both of them and to kind of like learn a little bit about the cartoon, because I don't think at that point anybody had really reached out and interviewed them. And I think somebody did a YouTube audio interview at a later time, if I recall. I think I remember looking it up a few years back. But yeah, that was pretty cool. And then I think the second issue I did with that was I did Final Fantasy VII, which made the cover, and I wrote up this huge piece on Final Fantasy VII, kind of like a retrospective. And what kills me is I wrote a really interesting piece for the third issue that I never put out, and it was like a retrospective on Dead or Alive, on the entire like series up to that point.
Oh, nice.
And I was really happy with that, but it ultimately got shelved because
never came out.
Yeah, it never came out. And I think I was working on another a couple other articles that ended up making it onto retrocollect.com because I was writing for them at the time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I was doing year by year for gaming.
Yeah, you were doing that for a while.
And the thing that's crazy, though, is then now I turned that into the Culture Chronicles, Video Game Culture Chronicles. So I have 90 and 91. And so, like, that actually had its start in Pixel Nation. And the irony is I think I started with 85 with Pixel Nation. And I wrote all the way up to 89. But then I turned it into giant books with huge spreads. And
Right.
So it'll be cool because I may go retrospectively and jump back and reference, and quote the Pixel Nation freaking ones from back in the day when I do like the older.
I'll have to go back and flip through those. It's been a long time since I have, but I was pretty proud of that. That was the first time I had made it into an actual like physical magazine in terms of
Nice.
I mean, like I've been printed before. I went to school for journalism and graduated with a bachelor's in journalism. So um, I I've been printed in a number of different publications, mostly like just regular newsprint
Hmm.
and stuff like that. But it's always really cool to see your work on paper that anybody could read. It's an interesting thing, and I'm glad that I was able to get this opportunity to write for a couple of your books after Pixel Nation folded, and
Hmm.
I guess call it kismet, because it was funny because I had no clue when I reached out to you that you had written for Pixel Nation until we got to talking, and I mentioned that I wrote for Pixel Nation, and you were like, yeah, so did I. I was like, no, oh, seriously? And I went back and found your name and was like, oh shit, oh, okay, all right, cool.
There's like two
So,
of us that did. Like, from America.
yeah.
There's
The
one other
two
guy.
only Americans.
There might have been one other guy, like you said. I don't
I
even
think so.
remember. I just know you and
Yeah.
me. But it's
Yep.
like, holy shit, like how things come full circle.
I know. I
And
know.
and so since we started about a little bit about the Mike Tendo beginnings, let's continue. I want to hear about your humble or not so humble beginnings. like
Um.
because so we got Pixel Nation. You're doing the
Yeah.
writing thing, but
I
you're
guess
huge into music, so I want to hear the side.
I am. Yeah. I would say that everything started back when I was in. I was always a huge gamer. But not to go too far back, but I would say like high school was probably right around the time when I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, and I know I wanted to do something with video games or something
Hmm.
with music. And I had an English professor who I became very fond of, and I really liked the way he taught. He was a really nice guy as well, and he kind of sat my dad down during the parent teacher conference, and he was like, what does Mike want to do with his life? And my dad was like, yeah, I think he wants to go into computers, like he wants to be like computer science or like computer programming. And he was like, well, is he really good with math and science? And my dad's like, no, actually he's really bad with math and science. And so he was like, well, he's an excellent writer, like you should really kind of steer him in that path. And after my dad came home and we talked about it, I was like, yeah, well, I've always wanted to write for Nintendo Power, so that makes sense. And so I started a journalism, degree when I got out of high school, and I was in college, and went to college for quite a while, and then ended up graduating. And from there, I was I had written for a bunch of different magazines, or rather a bunch of different newspapers,
Yeah.
like mostly local stuff, like covering all sorts of video game or music related stuff.
So have you
One,
only written about stuff that you enjoy, or like going through college? Obviously, you probably had to write about things that you weren't necessarily
oh
interested
yeah,
in. Like,
oh absolutely,
so
yeah.
when did you realize that the precipice was video games and music?
Well, so I started. I mean, like, yeah, you're absolutely right. You had to always cover stuff that isn't the most exciting in most cases. Like, I would have to go to like mayor, like town hall meetings and stuff like that for my local town, and I would, interview the mayor, interview different, people in the town and on the committee and everything. So I would do stuff like that. And I got big into radio at that point because I was pretty big in the music, and so I started leaning more towards radio at the time.
Okay.
Uh, doing I had my own radio show,
You
and
want me to blow your mind how crazy we all kind of paralleled each other?
yeah.
Is my minor's in mass communications, and I had a radio show
Oh, that's funny.
called the Puma Powerhouse, and we had like interviews on there and everything.
That's cool. I don't even remember what my show was called. I really don't. I think it was like Metal Mike or something. I don't know. I mostly played heavy metal
Mondays.
music. Yeah, or something like that.
We need to go back to Metal Mike Mondays. I'm just telling you.
I'm pretty sure that I called it like Metal Mike or Mike Metal or some Mike the metal show with Mike or something like that. It was really lame, but I just I remember because it was just me. Like it was pretty much just me sitting around talking to people out there about music, and I don't know, like I don't mind doing that, but I kind of always wanted somebody to interact with. So I started bringing in my friends and started chit-chatting. I was close with a couple of people who were pretty big metalheads. And so, I would play like all sorts of random stuff. And, back in the day, radio stations, like trying to run a radio station or trying to run a radio show probably wasn't as automated as it is now.
Oh, it definitely wasn't.
No. So there were a lot of headaches, a lot of problems. But shortly after that, I wanted to get into PR, like public relations. So my career kind of started, while I was in journalism. Like I was going through all the motions of learning about different aspects of journalism, writing and like writing for a news publication or just like a beat reporter. And then, doing television, doing radio, doing production, doing editing. I took communications courses, stuff in Photoshop and stuff like that, which a lot of it I forgot, but I had to relearn.
Of course.
Fairly recently. And, then I graduated. And then I was just like, what do I do? Like, what the hell do I do?
That's like everybody who graduated college around that era, myself included. It's like, what the fuck next?
Yeah, pretty much. The probably one of my most proud moments of that era was when I did a featurette, like it was a cover story for the I'm from Connecticut, so from the New Haven Advocate, and I did an article on video games live, which was coming to town.
Nice.
And yeah, and it was a pretty big deal because they have this like super old organ that they used, and the Mario pianist, Martin Lung, I think his name is.
Yeah.
He's like, that guy that played the Mario songs blindfolded?
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah,
that guy. So they had that guy come to Video Games Live, and he joined Tommy Tallarico on stage, and he played Castlevania music on an organ, like live.
That's amazing.
And it is fantastic. So what was cool about that article was I got to interview a bunch of different people in the video game industry for music specifically. Like I interviewed Grant Henry, who goes by Stemmage.
Yeah, Stemmage.
He does like Metroid Metal. Yep. Interviewed him. I interviewed Tommy Tallarico, which was really cool.
Interviewed Tommy. Nice.
Yeah. What was nice about that was kind of my real first taste of interviewing video game music composers. And I ended up getting backstage passes for that event. So I showed up at the event, and Tommy was there. I brought, because he actually did the music or not the music, but some of the sound effects were left in from when Tallarico Studios was working on Metroid Prime. So I brought my copy. I knew this story because he had told me the story. So I brought my copy of Metroid Prime, which he signed, and a copy of Earthworm Jim on the Sega CD, which he signed for a friend of mine.
Nice.
And, I got a photo with him, and I also met at that point, who was also there, who happened to coincidentally be visiting home, which was Connecticut. At the time, he was like an editor of IGN. And that was kind of a pivotal moment where this guy gave me this his business card. And I was talking to him, and I was like, yeah, I'm a reporter or whatever. And I told him what I do and that I've always wanted to write for Nintendo Power or whatever. And he was like, hey, why don't you come, when you graduate, call me up. And so I did, and I don't think it ever went anywhere, unfortunately. But it was one of those moments where it's like, all right, like this is what I want to do with my life,
And it got you really excited because it's like, oh, man, IGN.
Yeah, like I was stoked, but it just never came to be, unfortunately. And I got, a regular job and paid regular bills, and you know,
All
just
us
kind of
regular
lived life.
schmucks.
Yeah. Well, then, like, I started writing for RetroCollect.com,
Nice.
and that led to the Pixel Nation thing, and I did that, and I was pretty excited about that. And then Pixel Nation folded, unfortunately, but
Unfortunately, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I was happy to be a part of it, and it got my foot in the door as far as like being able to promote my work. And I think at that time, like that was right around like 2008, 2009, like right around then, I was getting really into watching like Angry Video Game Nerd, Happy Video Game Nerd, 16-bit Gems with
Mm-hmm.
Clan of the Grey Wolf with
Oh,
Rue.
yeah. Rue.
Yeah, yeah. And those guys I don't want to say looked up to, but like I saw what they were doing and I dug it. Like I really respected it. I appreciated it. And I thought to myself, why can't I do this? And I ended up attending MagFest one year, which was I think 2011
Went to
or
Mag.
12. Yeah, I think it was 2011. And I went to a panel that Derek Alexander was doing, and it just
That's
like
crazy.
it was like wildfire. It was like a light bulb went off, and I just got this huge flash of inspiration, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to start a video game review show, and I didn't do it like I think a lot of people nowadays they think that exact same thing, but then what ends up happening is they get delusions of grandeur. And I
There are a
certainly,
lot of people that are like misdirected on YouTube for sure.
oh, absolutely. And I think a lot of people do it for all the wrong reasons. And I kind of also did that as well for the wrong reasons. Like I did it thinking it would become a career, and
Oh,
it's
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's not. You can't. Like especially nowadays. Like back then, maybe, but like anyone I don't think anyone who truly gets successful does it because they want to get successful. I think a lot of the times, especially with this sort of stuff, you do it because you have the passion, you have the drive, and you have the interest, and you want to do it because you love it.
And that
And
probably what you know now is
yeah,
that when you're on camera, you can't
mhm,
fake passion. Like that shit comes through. So if
yeah,
you're over there like just trying to make stuff happen because you want to make dollars, like it's gonna show. And if
mhm.
you're just doing it because you love freaking what you're doing, it shows 100%.
Oh yeah. I mean, so I started this show, dude. You haven't played this game. I don't know how I came up with the name. It was just I just did,
It's
and
from the movie.
yeah, from the movie.
Dude, have you seen my car?
Yeah, dude, where's my car?
Dude,
Exactly.
oh yeah, dude, where's my car? Like, see, I don't
I
even know the name of the movie. That's awesome. It's amazing.
um I I remember Hey Ash, what you playing was really big back then. And
Okay.
I knew I wanted something to kind of like be that kind of catchy, like, dude, you haven't played this game?
Yeah.
And it's such a mouthful to say. So I've always kind of thought that the name is a curse and a blessing at the same time. It's a curse in the sense that it's a long name. Everyone's like, what is it?
Oh yeah, I wouldn't be
DYPHT?
able to do it.
Why are there like two G's? Like, for the longest time, people were calling it, dude, you haven't played this game yet. And I still get that a lot of the times is people
Yet.
will say that. And, now it's kind of like a running gag in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah, I'll probably put it in the description now just because you said
Yeah, yeah.
that. That's gonna happen now.
Yeah, yeah. But I don't know. I started working on reviews, and my first review was terrible. It was like 30 minutes long, and I did it on Metroid, which is one of my favorite games of all time, and it was a mess. And as I got better and better at working on reviews, I learned how to write a script. I learned what acting works, what acting doesn't, what lighting means, what camera work I should do. Like I had a vision, a goal with every episode. And I think, you know, if you look at the show now and you watch the show now and you compare it with watching it back in like season 1, season 2, it's kind of a mess. And I don't think really things started picking up until probably around season 3, where the show started getting pretty good and at least watchable. I don't claim that my show is the best in the world. I don't. It's one of those things where I make fun of myself on the show all the time.
And you're a classic where you like are your harshest critic. I can tell.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I hate that because it's like I want to be proud of what I put out, and sometimes I really am. But then there's always stuff that when I rewatch it, I'm like, oh, I could have done that better, or oh, I wish I had this equipment that I have now back then. You know, for the longest time, I was
That being
working
said, though, I enjoy season 1 and 2. So
yeah, well, you know, I appreciate it. I think there's a lot of charm with the first 2 seasons. I think that a lot of people really enjoyed the goofy campiness of it, where I didn't really know what I was doing, and I still to a degree don't really know. I have a specific formula that I try to fit everything into, but it's for the most part felt more like an assembly line where like I know how to put a review together. I in my mind know what I want to do with the review and how I want to put all the components together for like writing the script, playing through the game first and foremost, writing the script, what kind of acting bits I want to do. A lot of it comes from an initial concept as far as like what I want to review.
yeah.
So I'll take an idea and be like, oh, I want to, I don't know if this will actually happen, but I'll throw out an idea, for example, where like, or actually, instead of spoiling anything, which could potentially come for a future episode, I'll go back to my Haunting Ground review. So I reviewed Haunting Ground on the PS2, and I got my buddy Michael B. the Game Genie and Weekend Game Guy. I got them to be on the review as well. And I came up with this concept. It was a Halloween review, which I always go all out for Halloween reviews. And I came up with this concept where I thought it would be really funny if I lost a bet while playing online games with them and I lose a bet, and what I end up having to do is dress up like the character of the game I'm reviewing next. And I had planned on reviewing Haunting Ground, so I had to dress like Fiona. So I had to, dress in drag and, really commit to it. And it was a very time-consuming review, a lot of fun, a lot of moving parts in terms of the review itself, like getting everybody's footage together. The Halloween episodes tend to be the most frantic, and they also kind of end up being the ones that I tear my hair out on the most.
Jeez.
But they're so much fun to do. In the end, I look back on. That's the thing. If you can, the best advice that I always give to anybody who was thinking about you doing YouTube is don't do it for anybody but yourself. Put out videos that you want to watch.
That can be applied to any kind of creation, because like literally, like if I was trying to make books that are popular and sell, I'd be doing like children's books based on like Harry Potter's type stuff. I'm doing books that I like. I'm doing cool stuff that I think I would like. It's kind of why my collector's books are what they are, is because that's what I wanted. And that's the same thing with YouTube. I think a lot of people get like, oh, I want to be the next angry video game nerd, or I want to be the next whomever, and it's like, no, you got to do you.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so I would say that that was kind of the backbone of the show. Is it became less about me trying to do something to be famous and more about me just wanting to improve my quality of my show. And the more I've improved, the bigger I've gotten, and I'm a small fry on YouTube. I've only got like like 3,700 subscribers or something like that. And but I'm very
Not
happy
bad.
with where I'm at right now. I'd like to obviously be, in the 10,000 subs range, but I'm very comfortable with where I'm at. I have garnered a following of a great, loyal group of fans and people that I really enjoy hearing from. And I think that's the most important thing is you get to
Yeah.
conversate with people about video games that you love,
It's
so.
it's getting that niche viewer base because there was actually an interesting post on social media on Facebook by
Mhm.
Xander Scullion,
Yep.
and another buddy of ours because I'm pretty sure you know him too.
Yeah, I believe I know him, yeah.
Yeah, but he's really cool dude. But he was like, man, just the way YouTube is set up. If you don't use SEO and do videos on the newest hot thing and be the first one to do it, it kind of gets lost in the ether. And it's like, so those of you that are doing really cool shows in your own way, kind of gets lost. And he's like, he's talking about just maybe posting videos to Facebook too, just so that way people can just chat because he does it the same thing, like passion. And
Mhm.
what are your thoughts on like moving toward a YouTube combination of YouTube and Facebook to where you just get more people to interact and see your stuff and just shoot the shit with?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Facebook is that it's very different than YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily know if Facebook is the best way to get your stuff out there because, like, I mean, I promote my content on Facebook, but like, uh, it's not like a lot of the times I think people won't watch something if you promote it. I know that sounds super silly, but like if you are the hardest thing in my opinion
It's not silly,
about
by the way.
it is being your own cheerleader.
Yeah, it's not
So,
it's not silly. It's the classic that Kyle would say when he had his metal band after I
mhm,
left for the military. He would set up another account to promote his band, so it didn't look like he was cheerleading his own band.
right,
And
right.
I mean, it makes sense. And
Yeah.
the other thing that I heard is that if you post if you share your YouTube video on Facebook and I
Yeah.
watch it, you
Yeah.
don't get credit for that.
Um
I've
that's a
heard.
good point. I believe that you do get credit
You
for
used
it.
to,
It
but they
works.
changed their algorithm within the last year or two.
Did they? That's
That's what I
interesting.
heard. That's when I heard that with this whole Xander talk this week, and
Huh.
I'm like, oh, that might be why. Like, because I have a, like 5,500 followers on the Hagen's Alley Book Facebook page, and I
Yeah,
would
yeah.
post a video, and I'm like, I got 2 views on the motherfucker, but I got like 3,000 views on the Facebook like
Hmm.
post, and I'm like,
Yeah,
how
yeah.
do I have that when I only have 3 views? And I'm like,
Uh, YouTube is just a smorgasbord of shit.
it is, man,
Like
and
it's
like,
terrible.
but you're a
All
hundred
the things
percent
that
right
are.
with the cheerleading part. Like, it feels weird.
Mm.
It's like wearing your own shirt in a band.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You have to though. You
You
have to
have
be your
to.
biggest fan
Yep.
because otherwise you're just gonna sink.
Well, and the
And
thing is if you don't think that your stuff is cool enough to talk about it, why would I think that your stuff is cool enough to talk about it?
right.
It's
Yeah, if
it's a
you're
good
not
point.
proud, if you're not proud of the work that you're doing and you're not able to be like, "Hey, look at this thing I made. It's awesome. You guys should check it out." If you can't do that with a straight face and know that it's just like at the end of the day when you do a job and at the end of the day when you leave that job, when you shut those lights off, when you leave that building, did you did you work as hard as were you proud of the work that you put in?
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of that is missing from YouTube. I am not saying that like people don't put in hard work. There are tons that do, but I think that when people are trying to make something of themselves on YouTube, they have a singular goal of, oh, I'll just do a couple vlog videos and I'll get huge. That's not the way it works.
Oh no,
Um,
and
no.
like the stuff that you're doing with your YouTube channel, like people just don't understand how much work goes into that with editing and that. I'm like, what we're doing here with this podcast is specifically done so that I don't have to do a whole lot of editing because I don't have the time.
Yeah.
And like you guys do like amazing stuff. Like I'm not trying to get big on YouTube. I'm just using this as another way to get the information out. Let more people get into what we're into.
Yeah, it depends. It depends what it is. I mean, like for this latest review that I'm working on, which will come out hopefully sometime next week. It's probably going to be about a 15 to 16 minute review, and it's gameplay wise, it took me over 10 hours to beat the game. So you got to beat the game.
Yeah.
And then you got to write the script, which to me, that's always the easiest part. And then you got to do the voiceover work, which again, to me is probably the second easiest part. And then once you do all that, you do the live action stuff where you act out stuff that you've written for live action scenes, throw it all together, edit it, and put it out there. And you know, all of that probably on average, like a simple, for the most part, basic review like this one, probably takes anywhere between 25 to 28 hours of work, and that's just for one video. And then the more video. But for like the more in-depth reviews that I've done, like for example, 2 years ago, I did a review on Resident Evil Remake. With game versus game. And that was a two-parter video. One we did on his channel, which was Resident Evil Saturn versus Resident Evil PlayStation, and compared those two. And then on my channel, we did like a more heavily skit-based review of Resident Evil Remake on GameCube. And that one had a lot of moving parts, had a lot of stuff that I had to do behind the scenes. Working with other actors, doing costumes, makeup, that whole thing. And then the best part of that episode, well, I mean, you know, aside from the actors that were friends of mine that helped out, was I got the woman who played Jill Valentine's model, Julia Voth, to be on the episode. So basically, she allowed me to use a clip of her eating a sandwich dressed as Jill, and worked that into the script, and it came out really well. And I was very proud of that episode. And that's probably I think I have the most hits on that. I think it's at about 12,000.
I would definitely say too, the one thing that I've noticed that's progressed would be the timing of the humor pieces. Through the acting, that has progressed to like a mastery where it's like it's a classic aspect now. Whereas like at the beginning, it was a little bit like you didn't know how you wanted to go with it. But like I would say probably season 3, like you were saying, you hit the ground running.
I think a lot of that is just getting more comfortable in front of a camera.
Oh yeah.
And also getting more comfortable behind the camera, and having that kind of comedic timing down. It's difficult to do, even if like it's not your humor, which honestly, I'm not saying that this is like, I don't think that my humor is everyone's type of humor, but
it's definitely different, which I enjoy it.
Goofy. I'm a goofball in real life, and these videos are a version of myself. I like saying really goofy things and non sequiturs. I'm a big fan of absurdist humor. So a lot of that comes through in my reviews. And then I think it was probably about 2 years ago, I said to myself, you know what, I've got to start branching out and doing other videos. So I started a new series, 2 new series. One was called Noob Repair. Noob Repair, which is basically how can I give advice to gamers, or give repair advice or anything like that, and make it simple and easy and no soldering whatsoever. And so I have a bunch of different videos with that, all super easy, simple stuff. Like the first episode I did, like swapping out your battery on your Saturn.
It's definitely a pain in the ass for anybody who's ever owned a Saturn.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. It's
Like the
super
actual
easy to
battery
do.
itself dying all the time is what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah. If you
Jesus.
don't use a Saturn, then the battery dies in the back, the CMOS battery or whatever. So stuff like that, stuff like how to wrap controller wires properly. We did an episode where we did it kind of has like a Metal Jesus vibe because I bring on like guests sometimes, and they know like way more stuff than I do. So it kind of has like a Metal Jesus Rocks kind of vibe to it at
Bringing
points.
on subject matter experts.
Yeah, yeah. Like my friend Eric is like a hardware genius when it comes to a lot of stuff. Like he knows a lot about hardware, especially about Sega. So he helped me show people how to region mod, like physical hardware region mod your Super Nintendo, like basically cutting out the tabs. But we
Yeah.
did it in like 25-minute video, and we got super in depth to show everybody like, hey, this is how you do it. And we got a lot of comments from a lot of people who were like, thank you for going so in depth, because I really wanted to see bit by bit, point by point specifically what to do. And a lot of the videos I noticed on YouTube for like self repair stuff for video games,
Mm-hmm.
all the footage was like super dark. You couldn't see it. There wasn't good lighting. The people who were talking were muffled. They weren't clear. They weren't enunciating. And so I wanted to take a turn on a series like that, and I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out. And then the other series is Gaming Linguistics,
Oh
which
yeah, I've seen that one.
yep, that's kind of like a did you know gaming sort of thing, where it's like, did you know how to say this word of this game, or the name of this game, or the
I
name
always
of
say it wrong every time,
yeah.
especially the episodes that you do. I'm always like saying them the wrong way, and I'm like,
Like when I did the episode on East.
yeah, the Y is
Yeah, which everyone says is wise, and it's actually East.
East. I
uh
mean, you
yeah,
have Ninja. A lot of people still call Ninja Gaiden Ninja Gaiden. Like, I
yep,
mean,
Ninja Gaiden, yeah, that's another one. So
shit out by
yeah,
you, they
it's
say Mario.
Mario, yeah. Like our Canadian friends up north, a lot of them
It's a New
say, yeah,
Yorker
Mario,
thing.
Mario. But yeah, so I did that, and then 4 years ago, I started a show called Pixel Tunes Radio with Ed Wilson, who was my co-host, and we just released our final episode of that. So there's 110 episodes, and that's video game music. It's a video game music podcast, and we kind of came in during a lull where there weren't as many video game music podcasts running at that point. I think it was
Mm-hmm.
like Super Marcato Brothers, Legacy Music Hour had broken up, like they had taken a break, and we kind of swept in there around that time and started doing just like a goofy radio based video game music podcast, and it kind of took off. And
Yeah, you were there during the Wild West, kind of when we started with VGBS too. It was kind of Wild West, and then shit got really crazy.
oh yeah, absolutely. You know, the thing about podcasts is very similar to making videos in the sense that you start working on a project and you don't really know if you're doing great at it. But since I had that radio experience and my co-host did as well, we kind of, worked that into the show, and came up with funny commercials and skits and stuff. And
Yep.
we interviewed a couple composers over the course of 4 years. We interviewed Matt Furness, a legendary Genesis composer. We interviewed Matt Creamer, also known as Norin Rad, who did some really fantastic music. We interviewed Iku Mizutani, which was a email interview with him,
Nice.
and that was awesome because he's my favorite composer. We interviewed John Baker, who did the music for the Toe Jam and Earl games.
That's classic.
So, yeah, for the first two. So, I'm very proud of the work that we did with Pixel Tunes, but it had to come to an end. So now I'm working on a new podcast, which will be out June 13th, starting with the first episode. It's called XVGM Radio, and I'm
Nice.
co-hosting it with my friend Justin. And yeah, I'm pretty excited. So, a lot of stuff on my channel. that anyone who, I guess that kind of brings us full circle.
Yeah.
Kind of starting at the beginning with this podcast, starting with episode one. But this XVGM radio is going to be more of a continuation of Pixel Tunes Radio, but I would say it's more in line with my original vision where I wanted to make it even more like a radio show. So we're going to have like callers and people calling in, eventually like actual real people, not like fake, phony, like funny skit based stuff.
Like actually have listeners calling in and doing some stuff.
Yeah, that's the plan. Like, is starting up like a Patreon where we could have like people call in, like we give them the theme, and then we could have like people call in via Skype or via Discord, and record their audio. Come up with something with them to say, or they could be like, hey, I heard you guys are doing, PlayStation 1 games. I want to hear, this game, and then we'll play a track from that game. So it's kind of like a mix of a couple different podcasts, mostly my old podcast, Pixel Tunes, mix of Video Game Music Jukebox, which is their show is wrapping up, I believe, in July. So it's kind of meeting a lot of different needs for what people are gonna want. So I think it's gonna be really cool. I'm
Nice.
very excited about it. I'm excited about the prospects of a new show starting off fresh, and we're hitting the ground running with 3 episodes already pre-made, and then just continuing on from there.
Very nice. Yeah, it's super interesting though. Super interesting, and it's like crazy how podcasts come and go too. That I've noticed.
Oh yeah,
it's just, yeah. The time comes and you move on.
Yeah, I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would be like wrapping up on a podcast after over 100 episodes. But
yeah.
It's crazy when you look back and you're like, man, I did an episode every other week for 4 years, pretty much. Towards the end, we started delaying the episodes and doing monthly releases instead of every other week. But XVGM Radio will be going back to every other week.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I've noticed the same with VGBS, like Video Game Bullshit Podcast, that like it takes, as the podcast goes on, it takes a little more to get the episodes out, because like Kyle for us has always been the editor, and it just takes him a while to put them out, because it's like he hit that thing where it's like it's become a little monotonous. It's no longer has that shine on it and all that. So like we're getting toward episode 100, but it's like we stopped doing every other week a while ago. Like it was a while ago. We're like 4 or 5 years in, and it's like we're only at 92 right now, and it's just taking its time. But we're gonna continue to bullshit. It's like that's where this podcast right here fills in the need. Is just the need to hit up more interviews and things, because Kyle is never really into the interview aspect unless he had a piece of it. Like if he knew you too, he'd be super into it, but if he doesn't know you, he would kind of just sit back and chill, and it's just how it is.
Yeah, I was, for the most part, and at least in Pixel Tunes, I was always the one that was really gunning for interviews. I was always like, I got almost all of our interviews except I think Ed helped with getting one of them. But the Ikamizutani episode, for example, I was emailing him back and forth for like 2 to 3 months, just to try to struggle to get an interview with somebody who barely speaks English. So, it's certainly a challenge. We had our buddy Brian from Pixelated Audio helping out with that. I've met so many people over the years who have just been huge. Like a huge help. My friend Nickel Punk, who did the intro for my show for the first few years, and then my buddy Retro Shred, who now does the intro music for my show and also contributes music to it. He's just like a musical genius, just an awesome guitarist and musician, and a really talented guy, and he's a good friend. So it's nice to have people who have your back, who you really, respect, and who are talented and who know, their way around how to put something out in a timely fashion. So it's been really cool. I've been able to work with a lot of really cool people over the years. So
That's awesome, though. Yeah, I don't know if the listeners are hearing, but I hear my daughter like arguing with my wife downstairs, just like like yelling. I was like, that's awesome. That's classic with the live recording, though.
Yeah.
And no, it won't be edited out because that's classic.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, editing a podcast is totally different from like when you release something like this. It's just it's a lot more relaxed. It's a lot more easygoing, and you don't have to put as much time into it. But editing a podcast, like when you're editing out all the ums and the ahs and the dead air and stuff like that, it can really be a challenge because you have to basically re-listen to all the work that you did, then piece it all together, and then re-listen to it all again.
Yeah, that's where Kyle is like a perfectionist, and it's why it takes a while for the episodes to come out, and that's where this one's gonna be a little different. But again, this is just all about putting out cool shit.
Yeah.
So, and
definitely.
It's always interesting too, like we were talking about, like comfort behind the camera, comfort behind the mic, and then of course I'm gonna click the button for you two. We did some panels.
Yeah.
And like it's the classic, like we were at Too Many Games doing a panel, and it's always interesting getting with people because like one of my panels like a couple years ago, I had like Sean Long and Dean Dave and Scott Squatch and all these guys on there, and they all like didn't know how to do a panel.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then like that same year, you and I went to, it was Retro World Expo, and like we kind of took over the panel from Gamester on his, and then did another one, and like I was like, all right, we're like the only two that really know how to. And the irony on this picture was his Rewind Mike's on the left, but he's not on the podcast, so I don't want to confuse people. Poor Rewind got out of the picture, and then there's a giant head of a female in the picture because classic.
I mean, I don't have I didn't really have any kind of experience with panels. It was more like when I think the first panel I ever did was Gamester's panel when he asked me to be on it with you, and you know, just kind of try to just be yourself and be fun and keep it light, and you know, make sure that you're addressing the crowd as far as questions, and try not to keep the discussion too dry, and you know, try to keep everything lively and fun and interesting. And I think that's the key to having a successful panel.
Absolutely.
We did a panel last year with we had a situation where we had somebody at Retro World Expo bow out, and because of that, 2 slots, or I think it was either 2 or 3 slots, were open for panels, and it was like the week of, and they had to fill those slots very quickly. And so I stepped up and offered to help out. I was like, you know, hey, I'm sorry to hear about what happened. I'd love to help out in any way I can. So myself and Daniel Greenberg stepped up, and we both did respective podcasts, or panels rather. He did a panel on I'm trying to remember specifically what it was about
Wind Tyrion Game Studios, and he does like philosophical panels.
Yeah, he does some really educational, interesting information.
He's a doctor, so
yeah, I know, right?
Of like video games,
exactly,
like video game history or some shit. Like he's the first one ever from George Mason University. Like, super so crazy. Cool. Another contributor to some of my books. Like,
Dan's a great guy and a
awesome
good friend.
Guy.
So it's been great working with him on various different things. He actually was the one who did the logo for my gaming linguistics.
Nice.
So he did his thing on, I think it was Sunday, if I recall, and then I set up like an emergency panel, which was myself, Pam from Cannot Be Tamed, Rewind Mike, and RGT85.
Nice.
And you know, we kind of bounced back and forth on what topic we wanted to do, and then I think we ended up settling on reimaginings, re-releases, and remasters for games.
Okay,
you know, like the Final Fantasy VII remake.
That'll never come out.
Yeah.
Forever style.
Yeah. Resident Evil remake. You know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
that's a good topic, though.
Yeah, no, and there was a ton of stuff to talk about, and I don't know if maybe because it was last minute and we caught Sean off guard, but he seemed to be a bit quiet, and I think it was more he just chimed in when he felt he had something to say and something to contribute that he would be able to, mention. And I tend to notice that a lot of the YouTubers that do panels, they keep their panels a lot more like open-ended, a lot more fun,
Yeah.
and a lot more like flowy. Whereas the ones that I was doing, we were kind of like trying to have like actual, like, I don't want to say philosophical because I don't want to sound like a dick, but like, I guess like,
Pontificated.
yeah,
Pontificate.
we tried to have a topic and keep it on topic, but like, I remember when I walked into the game, and nothing, this is nothing slight the Game Chasers. They're great guys.
Oh
But
no.
I walked into their panel and they were talking about like feet or something like that. So it's just like, but that's who they are. So
Yeah.
like, every panel is going to be different. And so I believe Sean hosted his own panel as well,
Mm-hmm.
and it was more in line with him and his content and his style. And so I think that's what it's about, is just having the ability to project your own style in a panel. And for me, I always wanted to project a style which was like educational but also entertaining, and that's kind of
Yeah.
how I've always wanted to do things.
And, I mean, mine is I have the gift of gab, so I can bullshit about any subject you throw at me. So,
Yeah.
like, you throw me on a panel, I can freaking go to town. And it's always interesting, too, because I'm the silence killer. And
Mhm.
with you, you don't need a silence killer, which is awesome. That's what shows that you're like another radio personality type. Where
Yeah, don't shut up.
you don't need to, though. And that is literally what is needed for this type of podcasting and panels and YouTube and all of that. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's exactly what it's for. And
Oh, absolutely.
super cool. Like you and I on a podcast, we wouldn't get anything done. It'd be amazing.
No.
It'd be amazing.
No.
But us just here
Seriously.
shooting the shit is perfect.
Exactly.
Exactly. So we've come full circle. We're at 2018. We're both doing new podcasts.
Yep.
So what have you been playing this week? That's the crazy thing. What's been going on this week? Because we're gonna go into like the news type stuff.
Yeah. Gaming wise,
Yeah. What you been playing?
well, Bloodstained Curse of the Moon. I almost
Hell
said
yeah.
Circle of the Moon.
Circle
It's
of
so-
the Moon. No,
yeah.
that's the DS
Um,
game.
Not Castlevania Circle of the Moon, but
Yeah.
Bloodstained Curse of the Moon.
Yep.
And I beat it, and then now I'm going through it on like the nightmare mode or whatever it is, like the second mode.
Yeah, so I had the I don't know, the fate of being a backer of
Same here.
Bloodstained, so I didn't get my code, so I played the initial run through on Steam so I could play
Yeah.
it without spoilers, and then after that I could watch what people had to say about it. When I got the code for the Switch version, I actually played that last weekend, and I started playing through where you kill all your buddies mode.
Oh, okay. So you chose to do that. Okay.
So because
that I
the
haven't
first
done
time
yet.
I went through and collected them all classic Castlevania
Yep.
3 style. Now I'm doing it this way, and it's interesting because the powers that you get that from killing your buddies are not comparable to what the powers that your buddies have. It's unfortunate.
Right.
Yeah. But it'll be interesting because after you beat it that way, you get your buddies and all the powers.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a pretty good game. I
Solid.
enjoy that, so I'm very happy with that because I'm a huge Castlevania fan. So
Oh yeah,
As-
and literally that if that was what Bloodstained ended up being, I would have been happy as a backer.
yeah, absolutely, yeah,
And now we're gonna see how the new version that I am already assuming is going to play a lot like Dracula X Chronicles on the PSP.
yeah, or like Symphony of the Night, like that type of style, the Egavania
I think
style.
it's gonna
if you
be. I think it's gonna be less pixelated, like the PS1 Castlevania Symphony of the Night was, and more all high def and all that, which is like
Yeah.
when they did the remake.
I played the E3 build last year at New York Comic Con, and I actually got to interview Ego, which was just amazing.
Mind blowing.
that was just mind blowing that I was able to interview Iga. I sat down with him for about 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, and spoke with him just about, obviously through a translator. But spoke to him about Castlevania, told him I was a huge fan of the series and everything. And, I interviewed him. I asked him questions and stuff. And that interview, it's unfortunate because I didn't know I was going to interview him. It was more like, hey, I just went to go meet him and get his autograph. But then when I was talking to, oh my God, it's going to kill me. What is his name? I want to say Roberto, but I believe that's totally wrong, and I think I made that mistake last time.
Dr. Robotnik.
Yeah, no, it's the one of the PR people from 505 Games.
Oh, okay.
And he was like, "Do you want to interview him?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course.
Of course I do."
And so I wasn't prepared, but what I did was I set up my camera so that, I recorded it on my phone, and just I messed around with the audio in post production because it was not allowed to be a camera interview, like getting him on camera. I wasn't able to do that, so I had to do audio only. So
okay,
so I did it, and I was very happy with it, and it was just a really cool experience to be able to interview him. So but anyways, the point I was trying to make is that I played the E3 build, which was at New York Comic Con, and the game's a lot of fun. It's really cool. I was really enjoying it. I mean, it's definitely like a newer, revamped, like Symphony of the Night style game. Cool. So I think that people who really like Symphony of the Night are really going to dig it.
That's awesome, though. That's cool.
Yep.
Yeah. So the other thing I've been playing, and I never played it up to this point, I think it was a Rewind Mike video back in the day. Mm-hmm. Owlboy on the Switch now.
Oh, did he do Owlboy? I'm not sure.
I thought he did a little shout out. He might have just been talking about it on Facebook.
Possibly.
But yeah, I started playing Owlboy, and it's pretty cool. I haven't gotten too deep into it because I literally have the weekends to play.
Right, I hear you.
Yeah, weekdays is work, and then go home and pass on the couch, and then work again.
Yeah,
like it's madness, man.
I hear that. I have very little time to be able to play games that I actually want to sit down and play, but when I do, it's usually stuff that I want to review. So what ends up happening is I just end up playing through games that I want to review.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is that it's a different experience because you have to be paying attention to everything, whereas like
casual playing.
Yeah, like I'm playing Fist of the North Star on Xbox 360, Ken's Rage.
Mm-hmm. It's a
and
classic.
It's just for fun. I'm just hanging out playing it, and it's just like a fun, kind of a slow-paced beat 'em up, but it's enjoyable. I'm enjoying the story and the characters and everything, and it's pretty cool. So that I'm playing that. I'm also playing Radiant Historia, Perfect Chronology.
Cool. Yeah.
And that's on the 3DS, and that's a really cool like Chrono Trigger-ish. So it's like a more linear Chrono Trigger RPG, but it's unique that in the sense that if you screw up on a timeline, you can go back to a previous timeline and fix it.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is pretty neat, yeah. And you still get to experience the full story. It's more or less like a choose your own adventure. Like, oh, I tried this, it didn't work out. Let me go back to the previous point. Let me try it from here. So I'm playing that.
That's interesting that you mentioned choose your own adventures because last weekend my wife was going around to yard sales and she found some old choose your own adventure books. And so I started reading to my daughter London, The Cave of Time, the original classic. And started reading the Choose Your Own Adventure, and it's all about like the parents leaving for the weekend and all that craziness. And it's cool that there's an RPG that has the same kind of mentality.
Yeah. It's a pretty cool game. So, other than crazy. That, yeah, I've been just like casually playing through stuff. I've been playing Dragon's Crown Pro. which came out fairly recently.
Yeah, I never got the original Dragon's Crown, and I'm
Yeah, me
kind of
neither.
kind of glad that they released a pro version out with all the DLC and all the craziness, extra stuff.
Yeah, I mean it's mostly the same game as the PS3 and Vita version. And what's cool is it's got crossplay, so you could
Nice.
play online with your friends. But the really crappy part about the game is you can't play online with people unless you unlock the stables, which I didn't know. And you don't unlock the stables until like 5 hours into the game.
Oh, damn.
So it's like, so me and Rewind Mike and Nefarious West and Lucius Showcase, and we all sat down one day and we were like, all right, we're gonna play this online. We start playing, and then we end up reading, oh wait, we have to play like 5 hours in just to get the stables so we could play online. So
Damn.
yeah,
That's craziness now.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the other game I've been playing, which I played for VGBS, is Rambo 3. So probably
Genesis.
on the Sega Genesis, Rambo 3,
Okay.
and you'll probably
Yep.
see that episode in about 2020 when
Cool.
when it airs.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, it's a classic because editing takes forever. But
Yeah.
but yeah, no, it's really fun game. I love like those type of like just run and gun style.
Yeah. It's like a top down,
Mhm.
right? Running gun, kind of like Commando style or
Yep.
Ikari Warriors.
Two different aspects. There's a linear one, linear levels, and then there's like more like objective based levels too, which are
Mhm.
cool. So it was really fun. I can't wait to chat about it and move on to whatever the next homework is too, because like we've been sticking on certain homework games for a long time, and it's like it'd be cool to move on.
Yeah.
So in the news, this is one thing that I wanted to get your aspect on, and then you mentioned RGT85. He did a video on it recently
Yep.
too. What do you think about this whole Atari box thing, the Atari VGS, and how now it's a scam, a la the classic Coleco Chameleon style, where like basically they're showing gameplay of Tempest 4000 that's not on the Atari box because the programmer of the game came out and said, so we licensed this to a bunch of things, but the Linux core that the Atari box runs on, the operating system, the backbone of that system, the
Yeah.
game was not programmed for that. And it wasn't licensed to be programmed for that.
Yeah.
So basically everything on that $2.5 million Kickstarter Indiegogo crowdfunding thing has been fake.
So, I know nothing about it, to be honest with you, and I haven't been watching any videos or following any news about it.
Yeah.
Probably the reason why is I'm not an Atari fan. I think that, I mean, I came from the NES era.
Yeah, you're third
my
generation.
my first console was an NES. I did play Atari back then, but I never thought it was great. Like I always thought it was like I would play Atari and then my friends would be like, "Let's play something better," and then we played Mario. Like
Yep.
that's just how it was. And so I don't want to sound like I'm knocking Atari. Like I think Atari made huge leaps and bounds for what it was back in the day, but pretty much anytime I see anything with the name Atari on it, I think it's not up to standard. And that's unfair because I should be more open to, I'm able to admit when I'm wrong about something and or when I'm being hard-headed about something. And I'd say Atari is one of those things. I've always been very hard-headed about Atari, and so I haven't really been following the news on this. I heard about the $2 million Kickstarter thing.
And I think that's just simply your nostalgia too, because
Yeah.
it's what you grew up with, what games you played, what
Mm-hmm.
fun experiences you had with systems. So it's not like you're knocking on Atari. It's more so that
Sure.
you just didn't have that same experience. Like my first
Yeah.
system was an Atari, but like the NES blew me away. That
Yeah.
was why I to this day go back to the NES. But I still have fond memories and fun experiences with Atari.
Oh, definitely. I remember playing like Burger Time and like Frogger on Atari.
Kaboom was one of my favorites with the actual paddle joysticks.
Yep.
Classic.
And I did end up getting an Atari for cheap from my buddy Justin for a while, and I owned it. I think I bought it for like $10 off of him. He was selling his, and I bought a bunch of games for it. At one point, I had like a factory sealed copy of ET, which I found for like $2 somewhere.
In a landfill.
Yeah, no, yeah, in a landfill.
Probably in a landfill somewhere, thrown away.
Yeah. I really like Berserk. That's probably my favorite Atari 2600 game.
Berserk's excellent. Yep, that's a really good port of the arcade game.
Yep. But then I'd play stuff like Yar's Revenge, which people say is an amazing game, and I just don't see it.
I enjoy Yar's Revenge, but I only enjoy it in short stints.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been a fan of Pitfall, but that was one of my base games that I owned growing up.
Yep, Pitfall's great. I really did enjoy Pitfall.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much anything that plays and looks a little bit more advanced on the Atari, I seem to appreciate a little more.
And we're one thing in my Hidden Gaming Gems books going to kind of veer toward, at least from my perspective, is that like, so Pitfall 2 came out on the Atari, but I also had a Commodore 64, and the Commodore was more like a stepping stone between the Atari and the NES. So you would have graphics that are more comparable to the NES and have more gameplay experiences that were comparable, but with like 2 hours of loading. But but basically, like I played Pitfall 2 on the Commodore. So like that's where my experiences are going to get really interesting, because I have very fond memories of the Commodore and that aspect more so than the Atari. And so the Atari box scam itself is like, it just seems like this, whoever the guy is that, I mean, obviously he had to have licensed it from Atari or whatever, but like he just has a really stylized campaign that the public has grasped onto. Mm-hmm. That's the key. That's why he's at $2 million, is that the public has grasped onto this because it's really done well with computers.
Yeah, and I think that the product itself looks really cool. Like I've seen the physical product, and it looks really interesting. Like, so you'll have to clue me in. So this thing only plays old school Atari stuff, or it's you're saying Tempest 4000, so it's playing newer stuff as well.
Yeah. So basically, how I see this thing is that it's going to be a stylized mini catch-all not Raspberry Pi, but like a mini PC type deal. So it's going to have like a Linux-based core, which means it's going to be open-ended, so people will be able to port their programs to it pretty easily. No, I don't know why they would do a proprietary system when you could easily just have a Steam box or something. Like, if it was literally just a fancy, awesome front end to a Steam box with an Atari style to it, that would be fine. And I think if that's what they go with, honestly, it's not really a scam then. It's just not what they're saying it's going to be. They're saying it's going to be a console.
Right.
So, like, to me, though, like, the stuff that I saw, which was mainly in RGT85's video, but, like, the games, they have this whole, it almost looks like Coin Ops or Raspberry Pi where you're going through the games, and it, like, shows the box art, and then when you click on the game, it'll show, like, asteroids, and then, like, the asteroids graphics move around a little, and a lot of that stuff just looks really cool, but then the game itself is still asteroids on the Atari.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is what it is. Now, the thing is that, like, I get it, like, with the nostalgic experiences, but playing, like, Asteroids in the arcade is really fun because you get the unique controls. Playing the Asteroids arcade on a Raspberry Pi or an Xbox or even this Atari box, if it was the arcade one, it still wouldn't feel the same as playing it on the original stand-up. And that's the hard thing to replicate with emulation and newer stuff. So it'll be super interesting to see which route they go, if they just stick with straight 2600 or if they're going with just Atari games, like, and those are all going to be arcade ports. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah, that'd be kind of neat.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm torn because it's like I feel like there's no more of a market for anything like that, and I feel like they're maybe trying to capitalize a little bit on the whole NES Mini, Super NES Mini sort of thing.
Well, if they were trying to do that, though, like, how many Atari flashbacks are there now? Versions, like 20 of them, right?
Yeah, true.
So
True.
like, but here's the thing: you can't say there's no market because they have $2.5 million.
Yeah.
It is only, I think it was 10,000 something backers, which means you're talking the system probably costs $230 plus shipping or something. So that's pretty
Yeah.
expensive.
I would imagine though that most of the people that are contributing to this, who probably maybe also contributed to the Coleco Chameleon,
Maybe.
I huh?
I said maybe, yeah, yeah.
Maybe. So I think that no, and I don't want to generalize, but in my opinion, I feel like if I was a kid who grew up with an Xbox 360, a PS3, or even like earlier, like an N64, a PS2, a PS1, like no kid who grew up with that, who has expendable income, is going to contribute to an Atari box.
Yeah,
You know what I
definitely,
mean?
definitely not.
No, this thing is being sold to people who are probably like, maybe a little bit older than myself,
Yeah, you're looking
probably in their
mid to late 30s.
mid to late 30s. Well, I'm in my mid 30s. I just turned
Mm-hmm.
35.
That's what I'm saying. So you're saying
Yeah.
mid to late 30s and
Yep.
then to 50.
Yep. Yep. And it's those people who have disposable income who are funding this thing,
Well,
hoping to
there's
kind of cash
there's
in.
that, but at 2.5 million with 10,000, that means it was marketed to where just casual people have seen it. People that
Sure.
remember Atari, and
Yep.
literally that's why the orange button is there and the orange joystick is there, because that style right there and the wood grain, people
Yep.
are gonna see that. And Johnny was going to get his PBR at the fucking gas station on the weekend, who played the Atari growing up. He's like, oh my
Yep.
god. But like they
I
still
agree.
have to have $200+ to drop on this.
Oh yeah.
That's where it gets crazy, because those flashbacks I mentioned, those are what, $20 to $40.
$20. Yeah,
So
yeah.
this is a premium.
Yeah.
So
This
that's
is something that requires a little bit more coin
yeah.
to secure. And I
there's
think that
10,000 people.
yeah, I think ultimately the people that are funding this are people. Most of the people funding this are older people, older generation, slightly older, that are looking to, kind of, get a part of their childhood back, a little bit of nostalgia. I mean, it'd be like if Sega put out something for the Dreamcast 2. You know what I mean? If they
Yeah.
legitimately did an actual Dreamcast 2 or a Saturn 2,
And that's where
those.
you're saying that, like, the comparable to the NES Mini and the SNES Mini, because
Right.
that is exactly what the market that those two systems tapped into, that Nintendo
Yep.
hit. They hit a
Yeah.
unique market set, and then, of course, the resellers nabbed it all up to the point
Yeah,
where...
it's kind of this weird thing where like Nintendo puts out a limited quantity of an item, which in response makes the cost get driven up. It's
Mhm.
similar to like, the Cabbage Patch Kids, or, Tickle Me Elmo, any kind of like super hot toy.
And it was
that
crazy because the NES Mini was to the point where, like, people that aren't even interested in games were,
Yeah.
like, coming up to me and going, hey, were you able to get an NES Mini? And they're like, could
Yep.
you get me one? I want to get one for my husband, or I want to get one for something. And I'm like, well, I will see. I got mine, but I will see if I
Yeah.
can find another.
No, that's pretty much the same thing. Like I was getting people coming up to me who were like, "Oh, I bought the NES Mini," and I'm like, "All right, and I have a Super NES Mini, and literally the only reason why I have it is for Star Fox 2. That was
Yeah.
it. I wanted an official release of Star Fox 2, and that is the only reason why I got it.
So the interesting thing is that, you can hack both systems pretty
Sure.
easily.
Yep.
And putting Super Nintendo on the NES Mini, it's super blurry. But Nintendo fixed some of the innards for the Super Nintendo one to where it's a much better system, and everything's crisp and perfect.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. Like, that's the thing. Like, Nintendo does Nintendo well.
Yeah. Well, Nintendo's always had really top-notch quality. I mean, even their systems that tanked, like the Virtual Boy,
Mm-hmm.
it was still a really durable system. It was still a pretty hefty system. The quality was always there for the most part with Nintendo, but
Yeah.
um,
It's
y-
just super interesting to see, like,
except on the original NES, like the toaster,
yeah.
which had lots of problems with the pin connectors and
I
everything.
think
But
that was literally just the US version because they were trying to distinguish it from an actual video game system because the Atari kind of burned
yep,
consumer retailers out.
yeah,
It wasn't the gamers because that's the funny thing too is people talk about the video game crash. Well, I lived through that. It was a video game Shangri-La for me because
hmm
games were cheap. They were everywhere. But
oh yeah,
it burned out the retailers, and then so like Nintendo being a company couldn't get their system and new video games in the store without marketing it as a toy with a robot.
yep,
That's
yep.
where it's like the crash wasn't really a thing, except for now we call it that.
Yeah, well, we call it that. I mean, they were calling it that back then too, because
In the news, yeah.
video games never technically went away. It's just the home market kind of died down a little bit, at least
Mm-hmm.
in the U.S. But there's
It went
like
bargain bin.
right. Well, I mean, there's whole other markets that people forget about, like the European market, which kind of
Yeah,
leaned more towards like the BBC micros,
the computers.
the ZX Spectrums, the
Ooh, you called it
C64s.
Zed. It's like you do a show on
Yeah, yeah.
linguistics or something.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So there's a whole smorgasbord of gaming computers that were coming out in Europe that were huge, like
And
huge.
really all we had was the Commodore 64
Yeah.
that we shared in common with them. And
Yep.
they had like the VIC 20 before that where we had that, but I didn't
hmm
really get that at all. I had a few VIC 20 carts that go into the back of my Commodore.
Yep.
But like seriously, we didn't jump on board really hard until the Commodore 64.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was simply because
Um.
of the unique marketing.
Yeah. And then I think it became a thing where it became Sega versus Nintendo, and I think the
Oh
console
yeah.
wars kind of really created a huge problem that we still haven't recovered from. Where Sega's advertising back then was so hard hitting, and a lot of the other companies too were just like hammering Nintendo and really trying to bring them down because they were the top dog at the time.
And it's
And
to this
Sega,
day where everybody still thinks of Nintendo as the quote unquote kiddie system, and it's so
yeah,
funny.
exactly. That's the perfect example I meant to give is that
Yeah,
nowadays people are like, oh, Nintendo's just for babies. Well, that's because Sega was advertising that Nintendo was just for babies, and
yeah,
that
absolutely.
that has kind of always rang true, at least in the sense of advertising, and gamers feel the way they feel about Nintendo is they just keep echoing this whole, you know, Nintendo's for babies, Nintendo's for babies. But then you look at the Nintendo launches of like libraries of games, especially on the Switch now.
Oh jeez.
There's more mature and teen rated games on the Switch than I think probably the E for everyone games.
Probably, yeah. There's a ton.
Yeah, I will say that the Switch has a really solid library. It's just, I already own a PS4, and I already owned the Wii U, so there's not really that much there for me, which warrants a purchase. There's a couple games that I have my eye out for, but
Well, the
it hasn't
Switch
sold me.
was a perfect time for Nintendo to launch a new console for it to hit fire because they capitalized on the marketing of the NES Mini and the Super Nintendo Mini and how popular Nintendo was coming back on. They're like, all right, well, we have this new console now because the Wii
Uh,
U was kind of just didn't resonate with gamers. The Wii U
so
has an awesome library, and it's like
y-
people just didn't go to it.
yeah, so here's my theory about Wii U. If they called it anything other than Wii U,
Yeah,
anything without the name Wii in it, that thing would have sold like gangbusters.
I think
I
so.
think I think they painted themselves into a corner, and they tried to extend a brand which confused everybody.
Well,
It
especially because with the Wii, they had so many casual gamers that picked it up that when they called this thing the Wii U, the casual us gamers we knew, but
we
like
knew.
anybody who jumped on it just to get it because they wanted to exercise and stuff like that, they had no clue.
I'm also going to say that I remember going into a GameStop right shortly after the Wii U launched, like maybe within a year of it launching. And, Nintendo really screwed up in the sense that, I mean, they screwed up in multiple ways, but one of the biggest ways that I think they screwed up was they didn't have a ton of games in development, and they just kind of
Yeah.
treated it like they treated their previous consoles, in the sense that they would be working on maybe three or four big titles, and they would expect that those titles would carry them through each year.
And there would be enough
And that
third party to make up the difference.
right, and third parties were like, "Yo, this thing ain't selling because you're not putting games out for it."
Yeah.
And I think that is the big issue, is that Nintendo wasn't putting out games for their console initially, and there was too much of a lull in the
Mhm.
beginning, and that's why everybody started saying that the console was dead.
And I
But
really do feel like the Switch
Mhm.
is what the Wii U, the idea of the Wii U was supposed to be.
Oh,
Just that
absolutely.
technology was not there at the point.
Yeah,
Like
I
like
agree with
like
that.
this thing is like the system is amazing.
Yeah, it's a really well designed system for what it is.
Yep.
My only gripe with it, aside from the fact that the game library is just too much of been there, done that,
Mhm.
is the system is underpowered again. And
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of go back to the GameCube era, in the sense that the GameCube was the second most powerful console of that era.
I've
It
heard
was
from
more power.
others that it was more powerful than the others.
It was more powerful than the PS2,
Yep.
graphically, capability wise. In most ways, I've heard people argue that the PS2 is slightly more powerful than the GameCube. I don't see that.
No.
Um, Anytime I ever compared any multi-platform titles on the GameCube, the PS2, and the Xbox, they look the best on Xbox and GameCube, if not sometimes better on GameCube than Xbox.
Mhm.
Um, and PS2 always was the worst as far as the visuals go. Now, not saying that the PS2 visuals are bad or anything like that, but that's just been my experience from the games that I've seen multi-platform. And there's been some great games on all the systems, but
Mhm.
I definitely felt like the Xbox had the best graphics and this is coming from a non-Xbox or original Xbox owner. I didn't own an Xbox. I had a GameCube, and then later on had a PS2.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
But
kind of went through them. But yeah, like the thing that's interesting is that like I never go for the most powerful anyways. Like I always go for the games. And you're right though, like the whole Switch library right now is been there, done that, but
yeah.
because my backlog's so ridiculous, a lot of those games that have been coming out, especially like the ones for Steam, like
Mhm.
Owlboy for example, I didn't have that game, so I was like,
Mhm.
hell yeah, I get to finally play it and on a Nintendo console.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
same
yeah.
thing with Tiny Barbarian DX. I didn't play Tiny Barbarian. I didn't. There's a ton of games I hadn't played. I didn't even play Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze on the Wii U.
Mhm.
So now getting that version, but like Nintendo is re-releasing so many games that the online gaming community is going to give them shit for that. That's for sure.
Uh-huh. Oh
But
yeah, yeah.
it's pretty cool. You know they're going to do a Mario Maker. They're going to announce that at E3. They almost have to.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
it's
they're definitely doing Smash Brothers.
Smash and Metroid Prime 4.
Yeah, and as far as the Switch, I and the GameCube and all that, I don't have a problem with an underpowered console. My issue is that underpowered consoles tend to not get the most graphic heavy games. and a lot of the times they're the ports that do come out on the underpowered systems are flawed in a lot of ways, and that
Oh yeah, if
developers,
they try to release a AAA, for sure.
yeah, like that's the thing is like I own a PS4 to play AAA titles pretty much, like
Yeah.
AAA titles or like PlayStation exclusives, because PlayStation has some great exclusives.
Now,
So
now call me an old codger, but like I've been doing
you're
like,
an old codger.
thank you. I've been I've been reviewing, like, doing my top 10 games for the past like years, like 5, 10 years, whatever, since VG Masters Club, and I've noticed that like I never have AAA titles on mine at all. So
Yeah,
like I do have my, the PS4 for the freaking for the AAA titles and things, but I'm like, I never really even play those. Like I look forward to the Owl Boys of the world, and
sure.
those blow me away. But it's literally I'm just playing stuff that's more similar to what my nostalgia is, which is NES, Super Nintendo,
Yeah,
Sega Genesis. Like that's just
yeah.
what it is. So it's like it's interesting that like I still want the newest system to have the newest AAA titles on. Like the idea of playing the new God of War sounds amazing. I don't have the time to sink into it though, and I think that's mainly it. Is that still the indie game scene with all the retro style games? They're still short, palatable experiences in some cases.
Sure. Well, I think that what we're seeing is that there's something now brewing, I would say, called like double A games.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I kind of call them. And that's like the developers that are not quite indie, but and not homebrew, but they're also not triple A.
Talking
So
about
they're like,
like indie crates.
yeah, Intercreates,
Yeah.
I would say Way Forward,
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
yeah, like Marvel, like publisher Marvelous,
Mm-hmm. Nicholas. Nicholas.
Xseed, Nicholas, yep. All of those
I'm purposely saying them all
companies,
wrong just to mess with you, by the way.
yeah. All those companies are putting out content which is right up there with like, the triple A's, in the sense that, they're well crafted, well designed games, but they don't have the AAA backing of a company like EA or Ubisoft or
Mm-hmm.
Epic Games or any of those kinds of companies. So because of that, I don't want to say they suffer. They don't suffer. I would say it's more, you have to really want to know about these games to hear about
They
these
get
games.
overshadowed.
You know what I mean? And so I think that Nintendo's done a great job of working with those kinds of companies, those double A companies, to
Oh, and,
get
and, and that
content.
definitely is where the niche of the Switch is going to be, because they get lost in the sauce with the PS4 and the Xbox. Like they'll
Oh,
still be out,
absolutely.
but like with the Switch, it's like, all right, so it's on a cartridge, and
Yeah,
I get to play a retro style game on a Nintendo system, and
yeah,
there's not going to be that AAA competition in most
yeah.
cases.
I
And
guess my issue is like the online, the lack of a
oh
decent online.
yeah, I personally I'm not a giant fan of online either, because I'm an old
Neither am
codger.
I, but I like the idea that if I wanted to stream a game, I could just jump on and stream.
Yeah.
I don't have to I don't have to worry about playing a game on the Switch, which is going to be like a lower and like a worse port of an already existing game. Like if you compare, and I know this is a bad port, but if you compare like Dragon Quest Heroes 2 on um, PS4 versus Switch, there's like it's like night and day, like two totally different games as far as that goes, and that's just because it was a downport.
Yeah,
You
yeah, yeah.
when you got a game that's coming out by a AAA developer, they don't they don't like downporting their games down to a system like the Switch. You're starting to see these companies working with Nintendo, like Bethesda, like with like Doom,
With
for example.
Dark Souls that's coming out
Yeah,
too.
Dark Souls, Doom, Skyrim, and these are all ports of games that are a couple years old that still even though they run pretty well on the system,
Hmm.
in some aspects they struggle. Like, there's always like, oh, is there a difference between docked mode and undocked mode? Do I have to play the game, docked versus undocked? And there's this whole thing with portability that's totally new, because now we're finally experiencing a console experience in a handheld.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of take that with a grain of salt. You got to kind of understand that, yeah, this isn't going to be 30 frames per second, but it's also on a handheld.
Exactly, and the handle aspect's been probably one of the best parts because, like, if I'm going off to a convention or something, I can have my system with me while I'm waiting in the airport, and
Yeah.
that's like something that's ridiculous. Sitting there playing an amazing game like Zelda Breath of the Wild in an
Yeah.
airport is just ridiculous.
I guess the lack of I know that Nintendo finally has accounts, uh, but like they still have friend codes. They still have a lot of things that I have issues with, like just their online stability is not as good.
Oh, speaking
Uh,
of online stability, like playing the Mario Tennis game, when I
yeah,
played it in handheld mode,
yeah,
I had no issues in the morning. I played it
yeah.
later in the evening in docked
Forget it.
mode, and it was like it was pausing and stuff to where I couldn't even like predict shots.
Yep. And I never have that problem with my PS4.
Nope.
Like hardly ever. If I'm playing Doom online with somebody, or if I'm playing, any kind of online game with somebody, it always, for the most part, works well.
Mm-hmm.
A lack of hard drive, uh, that's a huge issue for me, because I don't want to, games are getting more and more, like, they're requiring more and more content be downloaded.
Lots of space.
So, yeah, so you need a ton of space. And like, I ran out of space on my 500 gig hard drive on my PS4. I had to get a terabyte.
Yeah,
Just,
we have
just,
to. My wife has been wanting to get like a 2 or 3 terabyte for our PS4 because we ran out of space to where
yep,
I can't even play some of the newer games that I've gotten because we can't install them.
exactly, exactly. And so I kind of feel like Nintendo's just in this spot where they're just getting by with their hardware, and yeah, they're making profit, which is what matters to them,
Mm-hmm.
financially, but at the same time, like, they're shortening the lifespan of their systems, where like the PS4 could probably go another 4 years, but the Switch is going to tap out with their hardware, I'd say, in 2 years tops.
Hmm.
Where
It'll
like
be interesting to see because I almost see the market. I don't know if the market's gonna progress as fast as it has in years because we're in more of an upgrade generation. Because
sure.
I'm doing hidden gaming gems with the generation by generation, and really the Switch is really 8.5 because you also have the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X
Yep.
right now, and
Yep.
that's really the next because you had to buy new systems to get those, and I did not upgrade
Yeah.
those two, but I did get the Switch, and the Switch is really an upgrade of the Wii U. Like it's a progressive upgrade, but
Yeah.
it's not like a generational jump, even though hardware wise and it's a completely different thing for Nintendo because they always have a gimmick.
I think the difference between the Switch and the Wii U is that the Wii U's gamepad was a gaming mechanic,
Yep.
whereas the Switch, I don't know, I feel like it's more advertised as gaming on the go, which is fine.
Yep.
But one of the things that I really loved about the Switch, or about the Wii U, was that I could play games where the screen on the controller that I was holding
The map.
was like, exactly, like a
Yeah.
map or an easy access to inventory. Like,
Yeah,
that to
that is
me,
not happening on that won't happen on the Switch. Yeah.
that won't happen on the Switch, right? And
Nope.
so that to me was a huge downgrade from the Wii U going to the Switch, because now you're going to a single screen situation. And I really liked the gimmick of on the Wii U, in the sense that the gamepad was more than just a gamepad. You could do different things with it. When they advertised in the beginning of the Wii U's life cycle, before the system came out, they showcased like people playing golf where like you would swing the
Have the
Wiimote
golf on the
and
ground and
right.
yeah.
Oh, that was just so cool. And even some of the stuff that they were doing with like Nintendo Land and
Mm-hmm.
some of the stuff that they were doing with like some of the games that came out on that system, like Resident Evil Revelations was really good on that system. Um,
And
any game.
it is I understand why Nintendo kind of kept the with the Wii series with the system, even though the name's terrible.
Yeah.
But like literally because it's still an extension of that system with all the
Mhm.
interactiveness of the Wii U.
If they called it, what was it supposed to be called? Like the Revolution, I think it was supposed to be called,
Was
or
that the
was that the Wii?
Revolution? Yeah, that was the Revolution.
The Wii was the Revolution, I thought. Yeah.
Because one was the Dolphin,
Yeah, that was GameCube. And
GameCube, and
then
then the
I think the Wii
Revolution.
was Revolution.
You have to remember what the
Eh,
Wii U was.
I'm not sure, but whatever they were going to call it,
Would have
they
been
should have
better.
just called it that. It doesn't matter as long as it has nothing to do with the Wii U, and that system would have done well. It would have done as good as the Switch.
Yeah.
In my opinion, yeah, I think that companies would have started making more games for it. I think companies were very hesitant because you're following up with the system with another system with the same name, and that first system tapered off after 3 to 4 years. There were some great games that came out for the Wii,
Mm-hmm.
but after the 3 4 years after Wii Motion Plus was developed, maybe a couple of more games came out after that were really notable, but for the most part, the system was full of a lot of shovelware and a
Tons of
lot of
shovelware.
yeah, tons and tons of shovelware, and not a lot of games that were coming out that were substantial. And then Wii U hit the ground, and it was kind of like just a fancier continuation of the Wii, and developers weren't buying it. The public didn't understand it, and it was just lose lose. So that's the reason why I think that Wii U flopped. But I mean, there were games that were giving totally new experiences that, yeah, they were different. Yeah, they weren't your average experience like Star Fox Zero, Fatal Frame.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't your average experiences, but I think that the Wii U is very underrated. I would consider it like either the Saturn or either the Saturn or the Dreamcast of Nintendo.
So I actually I do have at least one game right now written for the Wii U in the Hidden Game Gems book, and
Mhm.
it's actually kind of one that Nintendo highlighted for a while, and then it kind of nobody really played it or talked about. It was the Wonderful 101.
Oh yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
and like those that are fans of the Wii U are like, that's a freaking excellent game,
Mhm.
and like, but nobody really talks about it, so it's kind of a little bit of a hidden, underappreciated gem.
Yeah, no, that is
And
true.
yeah, it was like there's so many on that system. Like, it'll really be interesting to see what kind of games people choose for different systems and what
Mhm.
people gravitate towards.
Yeah.
Because I'm not gonna, say, oh well, the Nintendo is full. You can't write about any more Nintendo games.
Right, right.
Like literally, it's gonna be one review per game, but then it's gonna be like as many games for that generation as possible. Because I'm gonna see what generation wins, type thing.
Mm-hmm. Right, right.
Yeah. I want to do the one thing that I want to write about is some PlayStation VR games, because there's a couple out there that are pretty good.
Yeah, there's some
Um,
pretty cool stuff
but I don't
out
have a PSVR, so it's gonna. Hopefully, I'll have like somebody be able to write about
there.
them, because I don't have
Yeah.
one and I don't write about stuff. So we're getting over 2 hours.
Yeah.
So what do you have coming up? You said you have your new podcast. Where can you find your new podcast?
Sure. So the new podcast will be on my YouTube channel, but it'll also be on um, pretty much anywhere that you can go to get podcasts. So it'll be on all podcatchers. We'll have an RSS feed set up for it.
Nice.
If you have iTunes, just search for it. It's XVGM Radio. Um, the website is xvgmradio.com.
Nice.
And you can go there now. It's live. We have a Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/XVGM Radio. We're on Twitter as well, at XVGM Radio. And you can email us, xvgmradio@gmail.com. So,
You are
our first...
XVGM radioed up everywhere.
Yeah, pretty much. And the first episode, which I can reveal what it's going to be, it's going to be funnily enough, after talking about this for the past like maybe half an hour or so, it's going to be about the evolution of Nintendo console music.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's going to be like from the NES all the way until the Switch. And so we pick, tracks to kind of showcase, trying to talk about them. So that'll be the first episode, and that's it's going to be pretty cool. I think everyone will enjoy it. If you did like Pixel Tunes Radio, I think that you'll really like XVGM Radio as well, because it kind of goes in that similar style with a fresh new take and outlook on things, on music, on composers. So,
I think having more interviews too is going to be cool.
Yeah. We've already got a interview lined up with another composer for I think it's going to be our 5th episode. I don't want to talk too much about it because it's not finalized, but it's going to be a really awesome composer. So I'm very excited to kind of showcase that. Hopefully it goes through. For the YouTube stuff, I have a review coming out hopefully this coming week, and that will be like a continuation. I've been doing like video game reviews based on like games that are based on or include heavy metal music in some capacity. So last episode I did Heavy Metal FAC 2 on the PC, and I can't give it away just yet, but I'm doing a review on a game that will be coming out this week, coming up, and that'll have something to do with heavy metal.
Nice.
And I've got a couple ideas for
heavy metal. Heavy metal's
yeah.
good. Well, yeah. And the thing is, I'm actually covering a Switch game that's around heavy metal called Slain.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that game is really, really cool. It reminds me of like a Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis platformer.
Nice.
And it's all heavy metal and blood and guts.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what's been going on.
Nice.
Just working on trying to get this podcast up and running, and everything will be up and running June 13th for that, starting with new episodes every other week. But the website is live. You can go to it now if you wanted to. And then as far as YouTube, I'm going to be taking a little bit of a break. My wife is having our first daughter.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Good luck, and enjoy the no sleep for a while.
Yes. So I will be slowing down a little bit just to kind of catch my breath and enjoy.
How about your wife?
Yeah.
Gotta help out the wife in that situation. That's
exactly.
That's a no fail.
Yes. Yeah. So that's definitely happening. So that'll be any day now. She's expected to give birth. So I'll be taking a little bit of a break, but I'll be back in July at some point with another review. Fingers crossed. Hopefully. And then I've got some really cool stuff coming. Hopefully in August, where I may be doing like in a ways it's like a field trip, because I won't be recording anything in my location, like in my home. I'll be recording something at an event. That's really all I can kind of say is nice. It's like some sort of event that I'm going to be doing a review on tentatively for something. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's definitely something different that I haven't done before, but I think people will enjoy it. I try to keep things fresh and fun and unique and different, and try to, kind of bring back the spirit that has been missing from, YouTube, in my opinion, in a lot of ways. Stuff like Clan of the Grey Wolf, 16-bit gems, Happy Video Game Nerd, Angry Video Game Nerd, try to carry on that legacy of making reviews that I would watch. So I'm just happy that anybody's interested. So
Exactly. It's
yeah.
things have come full circle, and to the point where last year we were hanging out with Derek Alexander, just drinking beers and playing video games at a
Yeah,
convention.
that was pretty that was a lot of fun. It was cool. It was nice to because I'm such a fanboy when it comes to Derek Alexander, because I've met him a couple times, and every time I meet him, I'm like, dude, you're so awesome. Like, I always go up to him and I'm like, oh, I just wanted to thank you for inspiring me to do my own show on YouTube. And like, I'm sure he gets that constantly,
Oh,
but
I
like
bet.
I don't know. I know, like, looking at him when I'm telling him this, and like my brain is like, stop, you're embarrassing yourself, just shake his damn hand and walk away. But the fact that we got to hang out with him a little bit, just hanging out, drinking beers and playing old video games, and like we were playing like 3DO, those like 3DO porn games.
3DO porn games of
They were
freaking Rob.
Oh my god.
It's just you got me, who I like know everybody. So it's like the crazy thing is I don't even know if you know this, but Rob, who brought the 3DO porn games, like his dad worked for the company. Well, he's like basically the world champion of ice cold beer.
Oh, really?
He wins every year at MagFest. There's like a tournament, and like nobody can beat him in it. And it's like, he's like everybody has their own crazy niche, and it's like, but I'm like the dude who knows everybody. I'm like hanging out with the Angry Video Game Nerd or Derek Alexander, all these like YouTube guys, because I'm just hanging out with them like they're just normal people. Like
yeah.
Like
that's first and foremost treating.
And then I'm like, I enjoy their shit. It's awesome. Like their videos are great, and like Derek Alexander has reinvented himself into his whole
absolutely
stop skeletons from fighting, and brought in his girlfriend into it, and she freaking has all awesome content that she puts out too. And it's like,
absolutely,
it's a collaborative, awesome reinventation of what he's done.
Yeah, it's awesome to see him succeed, because I feel like he struggled for so long with Happy Video Game Nerd, and he had an audience, but I feel like he never really like took off, and it was always like this cult thing where like there were tons of people that really enjoyed Happy Video Game Nerd, but like it never kind of evolved from that. And then when he brought Grace in and started Stop Skeletons, I think it really took off, and they've been killing it. So I'm really proud of both of them. I think that they're great, they're great content providers. So it's really interesting, the stuff that they come up with and the topics that they discuss. So very like well, eloquated. They're just like they know how to speak. In the reviews and in everything that they write and they produce, so they're really top notch. So, but
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's cool stuff though. Yeah, like it'll be interesting to see. So I have a few conventions that I'll be hitting this year, and it's gonna be few and far between. I don't know what you're gonna be hitting up. Obviously, you got some prior engagements this summer, obviously. But I'm gonna be hitting up. I'm gonna be hitting up Classic Game Fest in Austin, Texas. So I'm in Texas, so anything Texas is gonna be easier for me. I'll be going to Game Straight Ones in Arizona, Game On. That's August, and then October is Portland Retro Gaming Expo. That's all I'm doing this year. I've done like 13 conventions in a year before, but like time does not exist anymore for me.
No, so. I hear you. I will be attending. Going
to Retro World this year.
Retro World Expo, just because it's in my backyard in Connecticut. So I will be there. I don't know if I'll be a guest or doing a panel. I really don't know.
Well, how Retro World goes, like you'll probably have 3 panels last minute. Like that's just how it works.
Yeah.
Because I remember like the first year I went, where we ended up doing 2 panels. Like literally they were like, yeah, we're too full this year for panels. And this was when I was at a video game con before that. And I'm like, okay, cool. Just let me know, because the guys that run it are awesome. And and then basically like day before they're like, oh, so you're gonna do a panel at this time?
Yeah, yeah.
And then, like, basically they bumped it up 30 minutes or something without telling me. So I'm at
Right.
my table, set up. It's at the beginning of the convention. I just go and I'm like, just saw Gamester. I'm like, hey, Gamester. Hey, Mike. Hey, Rewind. Come on. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. And we kind of, I
Yeah.
started the live panel, like the live VGBS episode while I was walking. And, like, it was just, that was a classic.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I think that was my first panel,
Nice.
if I recall. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was crazy, man.
I don't know. I don't know if I'll have panels. I'm not doing a video game music panel this year. I decided not to. So just because I need to get XVGM off the ground.
Yeah.
And I really want that to succeed. I want to get a little more clout with that before I can start, start having a panel,
Sure.
having a brand new project with no, with a very limited following right now because people don't know about it, or
Just
some of
started.
the hardcore fans know about it, but like not everybody knows about it. Not everybody has made the move over, and it's not even out yet. So trying to build that kind of repertoire for something that doesn't exist is like near impossible. So and I don't want to fall back on Pixel Tunes because I'm kind of trying to move away from it. So more or less just trying to build that brand and stick with it. But if I do something for a panel, it'll probably be along the lines of what I did last year, where I was on
The
a panel.
multi-panel. Yep.
I was on a couple panels. One was the one where we saved the time slot so we could provide something. So that was the one with the remasters and the remakes with
Yeah, with
RGT and
three.
yeah, and Pam and Rewind. And then I did another one with some Connecticut YouTubers, which was pretty cool, which was like a kind of like a workshop thing, which kind of was designed to like teach YouTubers like how to do YouTube, I guess, or what our experiences were with YouTube. So maybe something along the lines of that. I don't really know, but I can only go for one day this year because it falls on my wife's birthday.
Oh yeah, you
So
definitely can't go on that day.
yeah, I can't go on
Hmm.
Sunday, but I'm going to try to see if I can work with Retro World Expo to become a guest again for even if it's just one day. So
Yeah, that'd be a freaking awesome.
yeah,
So yeah, man, let's wrap it up.
yeah.
Fun stuff though, man. This is exactly what the podcast is about here. This one is just us just shooting the shit and hanging out, man.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely good catching up. We'll have to do it again sometime. Thanks for coming on, Mike, and make sure
Thanks for
everybody
having
you
me.
check out his new podcast. If you were familiar with the old school one, definitely check out the new one. It's video game music, very knowledgeable, and let's freaking stay retro.